I became everything I ever made fun of. I'm never going to be a junkie. I'm never going to be this. I'm never going to be that. I'll never do this type of drugs. I'll never go this far. Next thing you know, you end up being everything you swore you wouldn't be. I remember crying myself to sleep, saying, God, take this from me, whatever it takes. I knew that that was God speaking to me. You asked, so I'm doing what you couldn't do for yourself. And that was the last time I ever got high.
And now you're dealing hope.
Let's go, man.
Another episode of Beyond the Briefcase. Let's see what we have in store for today.
I like it. Is it a bomb?
It's not a bomb.
All right.
All right. So today we have John Huffman, the real John Huffman, on Beyond the Briefcase. The title is From Adversity to Empowerment, the John Huffman story. This gentleman here doesn't really need much of an introduction if you know him, but if you haven't already heard some of what he has to share, you're going to hear it today, so stay tuned. So welcome, John.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me, bro.
Thanks for coming at the end of the day. I know at the end of the day, you're ready to totally shut down, and I know I'm one of the few people you would actually agree to come at the end of the day.
One of the very few. Yes.
And it's been a while since we hung out. You know, we talk all the time, but even it's been a while since we even talked.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate. I'm really excited.
Last time was at Mind Your Business too.
Yeah.
You popped in and supported me. Yeah.
That's right. That was an awesome event that you had
man.
there, and I can't wait to see what you have in store for the next one.
Yeah, we're gonna start planning the next one next Friday.
Nice.
Yeah, man.
So we're gonna dive in. On a complete separate note, what's one place, if you had to choose to live in one place that you don't already live in, where would that be? Any place in the world?
Marathon or Duck Key. Yeah, and in the Keys.
Oh, Marathon or Duck Key.
Yeah, they're right next to each other.
Why?
I love to fish, right? I mean, that's probably the one thing other than sparring where I can turn off and not actually think about work. Because like even if I'm home or with family, anytime I'm like relaxing, my brain just always goes back to the next idea, the next thing, the next this. When I'm fishing, all I'm thinking about is that bite. When I'm sparring, I'm thinking about not getting punched in the face.
Yeah.
But I prefer the fishing over not getting punched in the face.
Yeah.
But so to answer your question, it's a dream for me. So yeah.
Well, I can appreciate that, you know, as a native Floridian, what fishing does. And I've seen some of the fishing trips that you've been on. So that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, man.
You ever heard that story of the fisherman that was approached by, he was living a life on an island and he was fishing all day and he was approached by a millionaire and said, you know, I'd love to do this. We could get all these ships, you could have a crew, and then one day you could retire and just fish all day. He's like, why would I do that? I already lived that lifestyle.
Exactly. He's like, if you do this plan for the next 10 years, eventually you'll be able to just fish and relax and hang out and eat lunch. And he's like, that's what I already do.
Yeah. So wouldn't it be nice to have that simple life and that simple mindset? We just keep wanting more for ourselves and our family, so we just can't stop. Amen. It's hard to turn us off. Well, so John owns a construction company, and I want to hear more about that. But you know, your story is very intriguing, and you've accomplished a lot. So tell us what really got you to where you're at today.
I mean, you know, I'm not trying to sound overly religious because I don't like religion, right? I believe it's all about a relationship, but I owe every ounce of it to God, man. Jesus, you know, really entered my life fully about 16 years ago. And taking all my gifts that he's blessed me with. See, and we were talking about this before the podcast about raising kids. You see your kids with these talents and these gifts, and we've got to tame them so that they use them for the proper way. And I've always had a gift. I don't want to use the word manipulation, but I've know how to manipulate very well, and to get what I want. I know people. God's always given me the ability to look at somebody and just understand what makes them tick, so I can tell them what they want to hear and get what I want. And I've used that my whole life before really coming into contact with Christ, for my own gain. And it led me to jail and close to death multiple times. So when he came into my life, man, I totally surrendered. And now I'm using those same gifts to bless people, right? To have empathy for people, to see pains and hurts and speak to them. So again, not to sound over religious, but I really owe everything to God, man, in his service.
And at what age was the turning point for you?
So
how old are you now?
So I'm 41.
Okay.
41 years young.
Yeah, that's right.
But 25 is when I caught my last charge. So, I tell people all the time, I became everything I ever made fun of. I was always an entrepreneur. I've always been an entrepreneur, and it landed me in jail, right?
Okay.
And one of the things that—
Street pharmacist,
yes, exactly. I'm not condoning that whatsoever.
We're past the statute of limitations, so no one's going to come after you for that.
So thank you for that. As you being a lawyer, I received that. But man, I became everything I ever made fun of, because I always thought I was better than the people that were, for lack of better terms, my clients, right? So I always I'm never going to be a junkie. I'm never going to be this. I'm never going to be that. I'll never do this type of drugs. I'll never go this far. But the world has a way of making those small compromises, and next thing you know, you end up being everything you swore you wouldn't be. And that's what happened in my life, right? I had the thing, I walk into a bar, everybody knew my name. I loved that vibe. I loved that when I showed up, people were like, oh, it's John, it's this. And I thought the entrepreneur, the street pharmacist is what brought that. But what I realize now is I still get that, just in a different way. Hey, it's the hope dealer now. It's the guy that's going to encourage me. It's the guy that's going to uplift me. So I still get that, but I get it through the way that God intended it, not the way that I was seeking after it. But I met my demise through painkillers, selling those. There was a season that you doctor shopped in Miami, as they called it, doctor shopping. And these doctors that, kind of coached you along to where you had the pain to where you could get prescriptions. So I would take people over there and have those doctors coach them. I would pay for all of that. And then I would give them 10% of their script, and I would take the rest of it, and I'd take them over there monthly. So it started as as another business, but I became my client, right? I became, what does Scarface say? Don't get high on your own supply, and it's a rule that we all make, but I think nobody really keeps, right? And that's the lie of the enemy. That's the lie of the world. You always feel like, oh, I'm not going to be an alcoholic. I just drink on the weekends. Well, for now, right? And that's the compromise, and that's the slow fade. And by 25, I became everything I ever made fun of. If I'm honest with myself, I became that junkie. I became that person that was dependent. And I remember crying myself to sleep, saying, God, take this from me, whatever it takes. It was the first time that I ever really cried and prayed and felt the presence of God. And I woke up the next morning like, oh, I'm tripping. I'm John Huffman. I got this. And 3 days later, I actually fell asleep behind a wheel and ran into a curb here in Golden Gate City on Green Boulevard, and a lady called the ambulance, and the cops came with the ambulance, and I had substance and stuff on me, so I went to jail. But the cool part about that story is this. People always ask, how do you hear God's voice, right? So I remember praying that prayer, and I didn't know what I was praying. I didn't know how to pray. I just said, take this from me, whatever it takes.
Right.
When I was in the back of that cop car, I heard that same prayer. Take this from me, whatever it takes. And I knew that was God speaking to me. You asked, so I'm doing what you couldn't do for yourself. And that was the last time I ever got high.
Wow.
Yeah, man.
And now you're dealing hope.
Let's go, man. That's the goal.
And how many kids are you dealing hope to?
Well, I've got 4 at home, but they're not kids
start
no
with
more.
Those big children of yours.
Yeah, man. I've got 24, 22, 21, and then 13. And I'm having a blast with all of them, right? Yeah. They're all mad at me right now because I just started charging them all rent. But
told you this day would come, Junior.
You got it.
You're still here, so I have no choice.
Yeah, I got to teach you responsibilities. But I'm blessed, man. I'm a part of multiple ministries, man. There's a group called City Takers that I'm a part of, man, that, it's adolescent kids and we go and pour into them. I was actually blessed after the Mind Your Business event. We talked about, going to that place that we felt abandoned that first time in my event. If you remember, I called it the well. Like, what well in your life? Like, what was that trauma in your life? And my first one was 11 years old, being arrested and taken to the juvenile detention center in Fort Myers, where I spent a lot of my juvenile time. But 2 weeks after that event, God opened the door and let me go in there and preach to those kids.
Wow.
And the crazy part is, at that event, when I was asking people to go to their well and I was visualizing it myself, it was in that detention center when I was stripped naked and asked to bend over and cough and all that. And I remember thinking, you've abandoned me. Where's my dad? Where's my mom? I'm abandoned. I remember it was the first time that I felt true abandonment.
And this was at 25?
This was at 11.
At 11. Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was my first real, I didn't know you called it trauma back then. But that was like my first time, my first well. Center. Yeah. But after my event, I got to go back there at 41.
Right.
After just talking about finding your well and looking at yourself, your young self, and going, I'm your hero. That young self looking at you today going, you're my hero.
Yeah.
Because today, if I were to meet me at 11 years old today, I would be my hero, right? And that's what God's done in my life. So I got to go back there and tell that story. And dude, kids were crying out to God. They were on their knees. We were praying for them. The correction officers never seen nothing like that happen.
What was the average age of the kids in the group?
12 to 17.
Wow. It's powerful.
Yeah. And there was one kid in there that was facing murder charge, accidentally shot his friend. Yeah.
Yeah, you were exactly what those kids needed.
Yeah. And the CEO said that they've never responded to anybody like this. You came and spoke their language, right? They related to me.
I think that's one of the unique gifts that you have, that you've sort of unintentionally started to capitalize on, because you're just speaking from a passion, wanting to get the message out so other people will benefit from it, but you didn't realize how powerful of an impact it would have at the time.
No, actually, I was insecure about it. I was very insecure because I have what a lawyer would say, street vernacular.
Okay.
So I'm like, I'm not educated. They're going to make, if I give my message, like I come off, I got a little slang to me, right? And, but God has just shown me, dude, I'm going to use you the way you just be you. And I mean, I'm selling multi-million-dollar remodels with some of the highest level entrepreneurs and business owners in the world, being who I am. So I'm like, if I can do that, why can't I give my message the same way? Right. And it's, like you said, it's working. Like, people are actually drawn to it.
Yeah. Well, it ignites you. You do what gives you that enthusiasm, that energy. I know that if I can talk on a topic for more than a few minutes and I start to think, gosh, I should probably let the other person start talk, then that's one of those things for me.
Yeah.
I get excited about technology.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you, I was starting to tell you about the setup we have here. I was like, I should probably shut up now. Let's hit record. It's like, you should see this camera here, this app here. That's the shiny stuff for me.
Yeah.
So I want to talk more about your childhood, just for a little bit. What were some of the personal obstacles you think led you to resort to the practices that you took up at such an early age?
Man, I just, I had no discipline. There was nobody telling me no. My mom, I mean, she was on drugs, she did her best, right? She tried her hardest, but she just wasn't there, and then my father just was absent. I had grandma, but you had to submit to grandma's rules, and that was church, and I wasn't going to grandma's house. So I chose the path of least resistance, and I got to hang out with, all the cool kids, what I mean, that were smoking weed and doing drugs and things of that nature. And I didn't like not having things. at a young age. There was a song called Scrub. Remember TLC? I don't want no scrub.
Yeah, I do remember.
And I didn't want to be a scrub. You know, I didn't want to come to school with.
Because the girls don't want no scrub.
No, girls don't want no scrub, you know? And so like that's where I found that entrepreneurism, and that was the path of least resistance. And I hung out with guys that were willing to teach me those things and willing to allow me to do, for lack of better terms, their dirty work. But I found my identity in that. I found my affirmation in it. You know, I was a young kid doing wild things and fighting and doing these things that no one else wanted to do. So I got that affirmation and that attention that I wanted, you know? So, I mean, that's really what had me go down that path or that road, you know, was just a lack of discipline.
So lack of discipline, lack of structure. I was talking to a previous guest about how people that get involved in gangs actually find more. So if they don't have structure at home, they resort to the gangs because it gives them something that's predictable.
Yep.
It may not be good, but they feel like they know what's
belong.
They belong to something. Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah, and there's structure in a gang, believe it or not. There's ranks, you know. I mean, you got foot soldier. I mean, they have ranks, foot soldier, general, you know, lieutenant. There's ranks. There's people you answer to. There's rules you live by.
Yeah.
So there's it's not the right structure, but it is structure. And I think all of us want that inherently. We want some type of structure. We want some kind of know-how.
So what age were you when you first picked up a Bible?
Oh man.
From what you can recall.
I remember, you know, I make this joke all the time. I started drugs at a young age. My grandma drugged me to church, you know? So I remember sitting under Pastor Thigpen, you know, because I was always kicked out of youth group.
Why were you kicked out of youth group?
Just being a clown.
Okay.
You know, being the clown. I could never shut up. Imagine that.
Yeah.
I always had to be the center.
Couldn't imagine that.
Exactly. I still have that problem. But I never really picked up a Bible. I think the first time I went to a boot camp called Drill Academy in Immokalee. They had a boot camp for a while there. And that was probably the first time that I picked up a Bible and like really started reading it. I read Matthew. I remember a guy sitting down with me that came there to volunteer and asked me to accept Christ and wrote it down in the Bible.
About how old were you then?
I was about 12.
Okay.
Yeah. But I mean, I didn't live for God even then, you know, I didn't know how. I believe I was saved. I believe Christ protected me all those years. I don't believe that if I would have died in my sin or, you know, when I was deliberately sinning, I don't believe I would have went to hell. I believe that God would have delivered me even in my mess. And he did. And I praise God that I didn't die in those moments. But yeah, around 12 years old. And then anytime you go to jail, you're always going to pick up the Bible, right?
Do push-ups and read the Bible.
Exactly. That's what you do, you know? But again, I didn't really start serving them until 25.
Okay.
26, somewhere around there. Yeah, when I got a bigger understanding of his love.
Yeah. Well, that leads you to, so I don't know what, tell me your journey starting that got you to Huffman Construction Group. Because I know you used to work with partners. You had a different company first.
Innovative Design Solutions.
And so Innovative Design Solutions, was that your first entrepreneur pursuit in the construction world as an owner?
So I did have a soffit and fascia company. I started when I was 22.
Okay.
That did fairly well, but I was, you know, still entrepreneurial in other areas.
Yeah.
So, you know,
it was a legitimate side hustle.
Yes. But yeah, my first real licensed, insured, and like I'm ready to make a career out of this was Innovative Design Solutions.
Okay.
I was actually just made a post before I came in here. It was 11 and a half years ago, almost 12 years ago.
Wow.
Yep.
Okay, so fast forward. So you were just around 30 years old.
29, yep.
And did you start with a partner?
Yeah, so there was a guy by the name of Larry West and Chris West. And my mom's best friend since the 5th grade was Michelle, and she married Larry. Now, there was moments in my childhood where, like, the Keys, for an example, I didn't know I didn't have a dad, but this guy took me to the Keys a couple times, right? There were times where I was just wanting to rest. He always gave that couch. You know what I mean? When I got out of juvenile prison and I had a kid on the way, he let me stay at his house and gave me a job. working construction. So really construction's all I really knew. You know what I mean? And back in those days in construction, I mean, it was the culture to smoke weed and drink beer. It was legit the culture. You know, at 10 o'clock you had what we called safety meeting. You know, you went and burned a bowl. You know what I mean?
When innovation.
No, this was like
started.
when I'm 19.
Okay.
Yeah, innovative. I was saved, set free, on fire for Jesus.
All right.
But why I chose construction. So when I graduated the program Teen Challenge and married my wife, I was living for God. I went and worked for a painter for a year. God told me to serve him. I wasn't getting paid great money, but I just served him and created processes and systems for him. And then one day I went to him and I said, hey, man, you're not utilizing me the way you need to utilize me. And he looked at me and said, there's one face to this company, and it's me. And at the time, I've been wanting to go out on my own. So I talked to my wife. I said, hey, man, I think I'm going to walk away from Frank. So I went to that guy, Larry West, who was, to me, I looked at him like a father figure. He's the only male figure that I knew that lived a decent life that I knew of, right? The only imagery that I've ever seen, a guy that works hard and provides for his family. So I went to Larry and I was like, hey, I want to use your license. You know, I'd love to use your license and try this thing on my own. And he said, man, if you ever find an opportunity, yeah. And we worked out a 50-50 split. If he found the job and brought it to us, and if I found the job, it was 7-30 split on the profit side. So I went and talked to my wife about it. She's like, that's a great idea. So when Frank, the guy I was working for at the time, didn't want to, allow me to level up, I called my wife and I was like, hey, I'm ready to jump. I was like, what do we got in the bank? She goes, $400. I was like, oh, I need your permission. She's like, do it. Coolest part is my wife got me the first job ever because she was working for a contractor and he just fired his painter. So I literally the next day after quitting went and was working for this guy as a painter. So it was pretty cool. So it was supposed to be a 30-70 split like I talked about. I think this is what I believe. Larry's not here to defend himself. But what I believe is Larry's seen potential and was like, holy crap, this kid's freaking doing it. Cause like I still had the energy like I did on the streets, but now I'm living for Jesus and I'm going, bro.
Okay.
And next thing I know, he's like, hey, let's go. Let's start a business. And he brought his son in, Chris. It was like a brother to me. And I'm like, oh, this is awesome. I finally got a family. And he's like a father to me. He's like a brother. Let's start this partnership. Worst thing I ever did. Now, God's used it. But where we messed up is I had these dreams and aspirations of building this huge company. They were cool with just chilling. So there was a conviction or an animosity that I had as years went on that I worked harder than them, and I wanted I wanted the showroom. I wanted the vans. I wanted all these things. And I obtained it, but at a cost, right? It cost me my health, almost cost me my marriage. It cost me that relationship with them. And that's when I joined C12 and I really started listening to guys like you. And I'm like, man, there's a better way than freaking, this isn't big. I just thought like you just fought for payroll every week and like this is just a grind for the rest of your life.
Yeah, you got some sage advice in that room.
Yeah, exactly. And so I started bringing that advice to them and they weren't hearing it. And then I started getting obsessed with learning and studying traction and EOS and all these things. And they weren't receiving it. And then I started helping other companies like Blake Becker and these other guys. And I'm watching them prosper. As the company that I have, they don't want no part of it. So I eventually just sat down with them and said, hey, man, we got to go our separate ways. Like this isn't working,
How did they receive that?
The relationship's never been the same. I mean, they're not confrontational people like I am, but it ruined it.
But so did they literally sit by passively as you actively built that thing to what it was?
100%.
So it boggles my mind then how that would change the relationship, because from what I recall, the way you handled it was the only way you could.
Yeah.
Maybe there was some little animosity in you, but there shouldn't have been reciprocal animosity.
Yeah, there was definitely animosity with me, 100%. And I'm still working through that.
Okay. Do you think that's contributing to they say you want to change somebody, change yourself?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I heard through the grapevines, they felt like I abandoned them. I called him my uncle. He was Larry's brother before he passed away. He kind of told me that, he's like, they feel like you abandoned them, kind of left them out to dry. But I had to do what was right for my family, man.
Yeah. Well, we won't go too much into the weeds on that. I know it kind of rubs salt in some of those wounds that are still there. But how did you build Huffman's Construction Group?
So, man, I did what I was supposed to do. When me and my wife talked about going out on our own, it was her and I. Mm-hmm. And when I brought that to Larry, it was kind of like, he wanted the other partnership, and it's a mistake that I made. So, I mean, I went and got my general's contractor's license in the process of.
And that's not an easy feat.
No.
That test I hear is hard.
Yeah, it was very hard. But I got it, praise God. And, me and my wife went into business with each other. And people that say don't go into business with your wife, you just got to set expectations. She has her lane, I have mine. Okay. She invites me into her lane, I go. If I go into her lane without invitation, she reminds me she didn't invite me. Okay. And then vice versa. As long as she's handling what she needs and that part of the business is healthy, and we run on EOS. So if that part of the business is healthy, I ain't messing with her. And if my part, I'm in sales and marketing, and that's really my gift. So as long as that's not hurting, she doesn't mess with me.
Well, let me ask you this, because I know it took a lot of hurt to get you to start Huffman's Construction, meaning you overcame a lot of hurdles. Oh, yeah. What, if there was one thing you realized had you done it differently, things might have went a different way, what might that one thing would have been when you started that partnership? Would it be to not have started, or would you have just done it a little differently?
So can I answer it both ways?
Yeah.
Just for the audience, because someone might need to hear this. I personally wouldn't have started it, right? Okay. But had I did, I would have set expectations. The reason I got bitter and upset was we all received the same. We all got the same.
A third.
A third. And we treated the account when there was, $500,000 in there. We treated it as it was everybody. Oh, you need windows? Go get windows. Oh, you want to vacate? We lived out of the company. Okay. So there was no accountability.
Okay.
So the first thing that I tell people, because I coach businesses now, when they want to go into partnership, first, find scenarios that you may not agree on and work through them and find out who you're really dealing with, right? Second, set the expectations in the roles. For an example, if your gift is administrative work and someone else's gift is sales, and a sales guy that sold $10 million a year would have a $600,000 salary, then he needs to be compensated for that. If an administrative role that you're doing as an office manager, then you need to be compensated as an office manager. You're going to make $85,000 a year. Now, the profits, those are split as a partnership. But the roles you actually play in the business, you should be compensated in the actual role.
So the owner is a different role than the employee.
Correct. So if me and you were to go into business and I was an office manager and I was my gifting, we're 50-50 partners, but you're willing to take on the burden of CEO, which is a $500,000 salary. Yeah. Then I shouldn't be making $500,000 and you making $500,000 when I'm doing something I can pay someone $85,000 top to do.
Do you think someone who hasn't seen that kind of money, that has the potential to see it? Well, if I use your example of the sales guy that sold $10 million, starts a partnership 50-50, aside from the fact that might be the wrong percentage to begin with.
Right, 100%.
I understand how salaries works. Not everybody listening to this will. So how would someone that doesn't understand how that works be able to comprehend it? Are there books to read? Are there people you should consult with? Do you get a lawyer? I mean,
oh my God, yeah, get a stinking lawyer. I mean, like I said, if you're going into a partnership and they're not willing to have a third party come in and work through, like almost like marriage counseling, like premarital counseling. Like me and my wife went through premarital counseling.
Pre-partnership counseling.
Yeah. Like if they're not willing to have that third party come in, run. Absolutely run. If they're not willing to have a legal document put in place, run.
I think that's really good advice for anybody listening right now, watching this in the future, that's one of the hardest decisions to make is when you start a partnership, because most partnerships fail, that you do your preliminary research and you test the water. Someone told me once, go on a risky vacation with that person where you might have to have each other's back to see how that person acts in the face of danger.
Amen. Yeah, because everybody's a good seller until the waters get rough, right?
Like maybe white water rafting would be a good one.
Exactly.
Is he going to give me the paddle or is he going to let me sink?
And again, I'm not this ain't, you're running a business, man. This ain't a social program. We don't all get the same. I think it should be performance based. But again, you got to take the time to write that out. What are those scenarios?
Yeah.
And that's where I made my mistake, right? So that answers that question both ways.
It does. And that was a really good answer. I think, I have a partnership, and the partnership, aside from a marriage partner, it's, there's a level of trust that is just really hard to find. Known each other since we were kids. And, I trust them to trust me, and they trust me equally. And the key is to not do anything that actually or seemingly violates that trust.
Yeah.
And that's not easy for everybody to do, because if you're putting in 100% of the effort, or let's say just the majority, more than 50%, but the profits are split, then you have to have as much of that conversation in advance before it becomes official.
100%. And here's what I've found out too, because I love to self-evaluate. And I think God's given me that ability to kind of speak to me in that. Mm-hmm. Not everybody's 100% is my 100%. I'm a freaking nut.
What do you mean by that? 100% of effort?
Yeah, their 100% of effort don't look like mine. I mean, I literally got off a plane yesterday, went home, took a nap, got up, walked 3 jobs, did a proposal, got my oil changed in my car. My wife calls me. She's, wait, where are you at? I'm walking. You just got off it. What do you do? It's just who I am.
That's actually really good stuff, John, because what you're saying is that you may have more capacity than the other person. So you got to assess that person's capacity before you sign or agree to do business with them. So you can sort of facilitate the next conversation, which is, all right, who's going to take what? Who's going to be paid what? Who's going to play what role?
Right. Because my capacity might yield a higher salary.
And instead, you learned all this the hardest possible way by actually putting in the effort, sharing equally in the money or return, but unequally in the effort and the sweat and the blood and the sacrifice.
Yeah.
And
but again, in their minds, they could have been doing 100%. I can't judge them and say, oh, they sat back because John just is going to handle it.
That's right.
They might have truly in their hearts, and again, this is me working through the process, they might have truly in their hearts felt like they were given as much as me. The truth is, the evidence is no, there's no effing way.
So is one of the things, and I don't, this isn't intended to offend anybody or make anybody feel bad. The only thing that you needed from them, was it the license?
Yeah.
And then how long did that last?
Got ducked, bro. I feel like I got ducked.
How long did that last?
I was in business with him for almost 8 years, man.
Wow.
Yeah.
So 8 years, which started as just using their license to sharing in significant amount of profits equally. Bro. They were sitting back fat and happy.
Bro.
So you abandoned their money tree. You kicked them off the money tree.
If I know what I knew now and I did what I did then, I'd have 10 million in the bank easy.
Wow.
Easy. When I left them, I was $1 million upside down.
I remember that. I remember you sharing that with us. And how did you overcome that?
God, bro, just put my faith in him, man.
But what are some of the actions that you took, or the beliefs that the convictions that you developed that really got you over that hump, that made you get up each day and just continue, aside from having the faith, because the faith is a prerequisite?
Yeah. I had to believe, and this is what your viewers need to listen to. So if you don't truly believe the things that you're saying, you're going to need to know the how and the why. But when you believe, you just do the thing, and the how and the why work themselves out. If you truly believe, and that's something I tell my kids, I can't believe for you. Mm-hmm. I can get you to understand and have knowledge of it. Mm-hmm. But belief and knowledge are two different things, right? And I believe that God went before me. I didn't know how I was going to get out of it. I had no freaking idea. I mean, I remember telling my wife, I had to break the news to her. And I remember her, like yelling at me at one night. I was laying down getting ready for the day. And she was like, how are you sleeping? Like, after you tell me this, you're going to late. And I remember telling her just like this, like, listen, I've got to get up in the morning and put my feet on the ground and let God direct my steps. That's all I know what to do. And if I don't get rest, God can't do the rest. And literally that's what I did. Everything I learned from C12 and guys like you and what I developed in all my lessons, I just knew I could go sell. I knew I could get the job done, and I knew I could make things happen. And I said, God, you're the rainmaker. You give me the opportunity, I'm going to walk through it. And that's what I did.
Amen to that.
And he made it rain for me. And it took me 1 year, and I got us out of it. I got us out of it in 1 year. Yeah. I got us out of it in 1 year. Well, I didn't get us. Let me rephrase that. God got me out of it in 1 year.
Well, so God became a central theme in your life, and then you started preaching.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah.
So tell me about how that sort of launched into this speaking career, and now you're an influencer and you're coaching people, and it's like now Huffman Construction is a side hustle.
Yeah. Amen. It's been the vehicle, man, and it's been good. But my passion is to empower and bless and transform people. Like, just like I transform homes. Like, I love transforming homes, and my life was transformed from addiction to, walking where I am today. And then the lesson that I learned in that partnership that I just shared, just like I help people in addiction, I've been preaching for the last 16 years. Since I graduated the program Teen Challenge, and for those who are listening, I wasn't a teen. I was 25 years old when I went to the program, but it's an adult center called Teen Challenge. But when I graduated that program, I started preaching. I wanted to help anybody I could that was dealing with addiction to get out of it. And I still do. Every Friday night, I go and preach at the place called the Harvest Recovery Ministry. I go to St. Matt's every Friday or every Thursday now and speak to the guys. And then I go to LaBelle once a month. And then I go to Teen Challenge once a month. So I've been doing that faithfully for 16 years now.
It's a big commitment.
Yeah. So I've been putting in, for a lack of better terms, the reps without anybody seeing what I'm doing, right?
Okay.
But when this business thing happened and I realized I could stop people from dealing with the pains that I went through, not necessarily, I think being in business, you're going to go through pain. Just knowing it, you just steward it differently.
Yeah.
You navigate it differently.
Yeah.
So I'm like, man, if I can save a marriage, because the truth is, Matt, I didn't know, my wife is a saint. How she dealt with me through some of those seasons, I was so mean to her. So overwhelmed and stressed, and thinking that I was serving family, that I was neglecting my own family, trying to serve a family that wasn't mine. Larry and Chris, I considered them family, grinding 90 hours a week, looking at my wife saying, do you want me busy or broke? And all these mean things that I said to my wife that wasn't of God. And I'm like, if God can help me, and I'm still in progress.
Yeah, we all are.
If God can help me in business, I want to help someone else. I want to help the John Huffman that's 3 years in business thinking he's a failure because he's selling all these jobs, and where's the money at? And I need people to know in business that you're not the only ones going, where's the money at? Yeah. Right? As an entrepreneur, how many times have you said that to yourself? Where's the money at?
Yeah.
And when I heard that from other people and I felt that rest, like when I said I was $1 million upside down at that table at C12, going to tell all these mighty men of business and godly men that and they're all like, oh yeah, I was 4 million. And this is how, there was so much release and a rest and knowing that I'm not a failure, that this is what other people go through.
Right.
So I'm like, man, I want to go share that with people. I want the world to know. I don't care if they judge me. Oh, John was $1 million upside down. What can he teach me? That's why I can teach you, right?
That's right.
And when you get to that place and you feel you're a failure, I want you to remind yourself, man, I remember that John Huffman guy said he was here. So I'm not the failure I think I am.
Yeah.
And that's where it was birthed, man.
And then you started offering multi-speaker programs. Tell us about the Mind Your Business. So what's it called? A conference?
I do.
Workshop?
Yeah, so I do
seminar.
One conference that's called, or seminar, once a year called Mind Your Business.
Okay.
And then I do 3 workshops. So the workshops are a little more intimate. I try to cap it out at 80 people.
Okay.
But the first Mind Your Business, so you want to hear that story? Can I tell that story, how it came? Yeah. So I'm on the back porch And I'm trying to do this speaking thing, and people know I speak and I'm posting it, but no one's like inviting me to their podcast or no one's inviting me to their stuff. So I'm on the back porch.
Whose back porch?
Mine. I'm on my back porch alone with God, reading my Bible, and I'm kind of like, licking my own wounds. Like, no one likes me, like no one's inviting me. And I just really heard the Spirit of God tell me, like, what are you waiting on? I've given you the talents. I've given you the resources. Use them. Mm-hmm. I got up, walked in my kitchen where my wife was, and I says, I'm going to do an event on 420. She's like, what? I was like, yeah, I'm going to do an event. It's called Mind Your Business, because people need to mind their business. And she's like, okay, dude, whatever. And so I went on Facebook and posted it. So like I was committed.
And you're like, oh boy, now I'm all in.
I did it. And so
I remember that post. I thought I was like, man, well, I wonder what John's been up to. Well, little did I know, you didn't even know what you were up to.
And dude, I was shooting for 50 people at that event. We got 139. We had no more seats left. And that day I tried to teach. I teach like the EOS stuff that I learned, but it was a great outcome. But what happened that day was God helped me destroy my inner critic. Because I didn't think I was enough. No one's going to pay to come hear me speak. No one's going to pay to come listen to me teach. And we booked it out. And then the second one we just did, there was over 500 people in attendance.
It was it was very well done.
Yeah. And man, it's just.
I was motivated going there, and I've been to a lot of events like that. And there's so much good energy in the room. Yeah. And a lot of local people too. And a lot of people that like 500 people, you've never seen more than half of those people in that room.
It was absolutely, it was very humbling. It was very humbling for me. It was cool, man. I'm thankful. I'm beyond
Can people
thankful.
that don't know about that or that are listening, can you tell them how they can see some of that footage that was recorded that day?
Yeah, absolutely. So my YouTube, John Huffman Speaks. You can go on my Instagram, Real John Huffman.
Okay.
REL, and then obviously Facebook as well. There's a lot of content.
And scroll through and you can see some of the clips from the second Mind Your Business event.
And they just got done editing my full version. So I'll be posting that full 45, 50-minute clip. Wow. So I'll be posting that probably next week.
No charge?
No charge. I'm just going to post it on YouTube.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's good stuff.
Yeah, man.
And do you have the next one planned?
So literally next Friday. So here's the cool part, Matt. So last night on my back porch again. And for those who don't know, my back porch is kind of my quiet space. It's my where my Bible is and whatever book I'm reading. Mm-hmm. And I just text the group and I go, hey, y'all ready to start planning next year's? And two people were like, I was just thinking about that. So our first meeting is Friday at 1 p.m. next week, first Zoom. We're going to start planning it. I'm probably going to have it in February or January or February of next year. So we're going to figure out if it's going to be in Fort Myers again or Tampa or something. We're faith-based. I'm not running from that. I'm not making it a faith-based event, but I want people to know, like, you're coming to a guy that's a Jesus freak. Like that's I'm teaching biblical principles because I understand if you can fix you, everything else gets fixed in the process. And I don't care how good you get at the other stuff. If you ain't right,
that's true.
Eventually it's going to go wrong. So man, anyways.
You're quite involved in the community. Other than what you've already shared with us today, what's next for John Huffman?
Man, I'm going to continue to grow Huffman's Construction. I mean, we're on the, we did a little over 6 million last year. I want to hit 10 million, and really maximize it, put the right people, the right seats, and then start critiquing or, giving, some sharpening to my next successor. I want to start finding that person to maybe be I don't know if it's a CEO, but maybe I'll always be a CEO for a while, but maybe find that COO that's a really, really good implementer.
Yeah.
I've got all the processes and systems. I've built a lot of them, and they're working well. where I can be in a podcast and be preaching and do all these other things while my business is producing and allowing me to do. I couldn't did Huffman Speaks without Huffman's Construction. I mean, it funded it. You know.
So you're going to continue to build what you already started as opposed to start building something new.
So I messed up a little bit last year and really like went so hard into Huffman Speaks that I neglected Huffman's Construction. And I was just, I was naive and thinking all the processes and systems in the leadership meetings were gonna fix it. But I had to be a little more hands-on than I thought.
You're like, I'd love to just work on the business, but I gotta work in the business just a little bit.
I gotta be real.
I can relate with that. You take your finger off the pulse for too long.
Yeah.
The leader is a little too disconnected for too long.
Yeah.
And the systems might not have someone to repair when there's a cog in the system.
100%. And, during the L10s, everything was good. And then all of a sudden, you figured it was half troops and
you had to be more present. So you're back. That's good that you caught that when you did.
Yeah. So I really just made a decision. Okay. I got the group coaching, which is every Wednesday from 7:30 to 9, right? And it yields a good profit. And I love doing what I do. And it doesn't take a lot from me. I've got up to 30 people on the call. It's an hour and a half a week. It doesn't take a lot, right? And then I'll do 3 workshops and 1 main event. That's it. That's all I'm doing for Huffman's.
That's awesome.
Huffman
That's manageable.
Speaks. Yeah.
But you're still doing the preaching.
Yeah.
Thankfully, those kids are a little older. They don't have soccer practice to go to or any of that.
Well, I'm coach for my volleyball.
Okay.
So Saturdays,
travel or no?
Not yet.
Okay.
She's YMCA, but I'm the coach. So our Saturdays are that. And I wouldn't trade that for the world. Like that's me and her were last night were, hitting the volleyball and stuff like it.
That's
it's something really cool.
That's great.
And she's like in fishing now too, which is really cool. So 2 things we can share in.
Yeah, that is a good one. You got that fishing spot over in where Everglades City?
Yeah, I got a fishing cabin, Everglades City.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, if there was one thing or 2 that you want listeners to take away from today's discussion, what would that thing be?
I mean, man, I'm big and you're enough. I'm telling you, I ran from me my whole life, man. Uneducated, little ghetto punk, that was never going to be accepted or never equal up. And it's the biggest lie.
You ran from you.
Me. Yeah. I wanted to be educated. I wanted to be somebody. I wanted to be different. I need to fix my vocabulary. I need to fix everything who I was.
So that rings well with real John Huffman. Aside from making sure people know it's you and not a spoof or an actor, it also is keep it real.
So
it's like a reminder almost.
Amen. So Huffman's Construction's core values: responsiveness, respond to the needs of our clients in a timely manner; excellence, doing the right thing regardless of the cost; attitude, keeping a positive attitude regardless of the day or the situation; liability, no finger pointing. Here at Huffman's, we keep it REAL, real.
Okay.
So it's just been, and that was an accident, right? So it's like, I think that's the God just showing me, I just want you to be you. I'm going to open up the doors. You're enough.
So if you don't have perfect English or you don't have a perfect vocabulary, instead of trying to perfect it, just hone your craft.
That's it.
Stay true to yourself.
That's it.
And one thing I could add is just do it. Just start, right?
Just start. My favorite saying, jump off the mountain and build the plane on the way down. I mean, I just shared with you my first event. I literally did that.
Yeah.
And if you don't start, you never achieve anything. And here's the cool part. My vocabulary's gotten a lot better.
Yeah, it has.
But it's just, it's in due time. It's organic.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not trying to be somebody else. I'm just being me. And in the process, those things I was insecure about are fixing themselves. I mean, you're my friend. You're one of the coolest guys I know. Right? You're an attorney.
Thanks.
You're successful. I've been to your house. Like you are the epitome of, look, I can barely say that word. You know what I mean? Of someone that I want to be like. And you're inviting me. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I didn't have to put on an image for you. I didn't have to act like I'm more educated. I was just
That's
me.
a good point. I think I relate with guys like you because I too was brought up in a a home where we really didn't have things handed to us. I doubted myself. I was, we won't be this about me today, but I think I can relate with a lot.
You definitely can.
So that sort of brings it down to home. But I also struggled with keeping it real to myself by trying to act to fit in, right? So stop trying to fit in, guys.
Stop.
You hear that? Acclimate to the bare minimum. You don't want to be a schmuck. You don't want to be a jerk.
If you're
you certainly don't want to be arrogant.
Yeah.
Right? So if you're any of those things, stop it.
Yes, exactly.
And but be real and true to yourself.
Yeah, man.
And don't forget to plan and have systems and
it changed my life, man. I mean, that's another thing that, again, I was diagnosed ADHD. I was on Ritalin 2nd grade, kicked out of public school, put in New Beginnings because I wouldn't take my Ritalin. I was told that I could never be a systems and process guy. I wasn't built for it. It's not in my DNA. Well, who are you to tell me who I am? Right? Just because you can do all things through Christ who strengthens you. And I just, hey, Lord, help me be organized. Help me be more intentional. Help me pay attention. Help me hear.
And he put the people in your life that were good at the things that you weren't.
Yeah. And that's exactly it, man.
Yeah.
100%.
Well, I appreciate your time today. Appreciate you sharing the story with me. Some of it, parts of it, I had never heard before.
Yeah, you pulled out something that no one's pulled out before. Yeah, I've never talked about the partners or any of that stuff.
Yeah, well, sorry if that was a little too much, but I appreciate you sharing with it. And I know this will be made public, so you wouldn't share anything that's unauthentic. So remind the listeners how to connect with you online.
So johnhuffmanspeaks.com. YouTube, John Huffman, Real John Huffman, Instagram, Real John Huffman, and then John Huffman on Facebook. And then if you're looking for renovating your home and you want a contractor that's keeping it real, Huffman's Construction Group, naplesconstruction.com, naplesconstruction.com.
Nice. Well, you heard it. And you got to help him get to that 10 million mark. So if you got any projects you've been sitting on, just give him a call.
Let's go.
All right. Thanks again, John.
Thank you, brother.